live right now, and hello, people. This is me, Margreet here, and this is Alex Simmons, and this
Yeah,
is
that's
my
me.
very first live stream thing, and I'm figuring it out as we go along. So if you're
It's
there and you feel
international
like
too.
it, put something in the chat so I can see it.
It's your first. Is this your first international live stream?
It's the first time I host a live stream, and I'm using this Restream program, and yeah, I've been in
Yeah.
Zoom sessions and all of that, and recordings and live Zoom sessions, but never with the commentary just going on in the side.
Oh,
So
okay. Is
yeah,
this
so
also
yeah.
recorded?
This I can't record it because I have a free version of Restream, but YouTube will save it, so I can just rip it off YouTube later.
Okay. Well, it's good
So
to
yeah,
see
well,
you.
let me explain to anyone who's watching why how this came about. It's actually for me. It started with that I started my newsletter, and I think that's why we're back in contact now. Although it was through Facebook, and I saw you posting something on Facebook about you redesigning your website, and I commented on that, and then you said we should catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, okay, well, why not do it publicly so that I can live my dream of uh, starting the Restream experiment.
Well, I'm a good person to experiment on this kind of thing with. That I have a podcast that I've been doing for, oh my goodness, I think a little over 5 years, called "Tell the Damn Story" with my friend, co-writer friend Chris Ryan. So that's I'm used to this sort of thing, but we always run into little tech challenges. So it's a good experience all the way around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I must say, up until now, this is really easy to navigate.
Good.
And I
Let's keep it that
even
way.
have pictures that you sent me. But first you said a podcast you're doing, but I saw on your site you're also you have your own podcast, Simmons Says.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I have a lot to talk about.
You
I
you
actually
do
I
so
don't know.
much. You do so much many different things in the comics field, in the movie writing field, in writing in general. Where would you like to start, Alex?
Well, I guess maybe for the sake of whoever is listening who doesn't know anything about me or you for that matter, I would like to say is hi, Alex Simmons. I'm a freelance writer. I'm also a writing consultant and coach. I've been a professional writer for years.
I
Actually, I
didn't
guess
quite catch it.
yeah, yeah, that was
Where are
intentional.
you? Where I
I'm
have
in
no
New
idea
York
where you
City.
are.
I'm
Oh,
in New York City, and I've been a professional writer for over almost 40 years. Almost 40 years. I started out as an actor, but I started out as a child, so that's even further back. But my love of storytelling, of watching films, of reading books and comics and all of that, that was my early life. That was my going 1,000 different places through books and movies. And so I just sort of naturally, organically wanted to do the same thing, to create those things. So as I grew up, I pursued acting, and the acting led to writing, and the writing led to me sort of juggling the two careers for a while, and then finally a lot more writing. And I've written comic books, plays, children's books, documentaries, pitches for films, all kinds of things like that. And so there's a lot that I've done in that particular order. Currently, I have, and you'll see this, a number of books I've written for Archie, DC, some of my own books called Blackjack, and we'll talk about that. And I'm also teaching for the New York Film Academy here in New York. I teach screenwriting. So that gives you a little bit of a bubble of what I do. And I also am an international speaker.
I'm already overwhelmed. Shall we just put pictures in there? That always makes things easier.
Well, look, can we just talk also how we met? Because that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah. It was way back
Mm,
10 years ago,
yeah.
a
I
long
don't
time
even
ago.
know how many years now, really.
I do know because it was will always remember 2013, our first trip to New York, and
Ah,
staying in this wonderful Airbnb on Central Park on the west side with Noel.
Yep.
And you know Noelle because you went to school together. And
Yep.
she said, "Oh, you're making comics, then you really should meet this friend of mine, Alex." And then suddenly you were there in the kitchen, and we couldn't get away.
Yes. Yes. Funny how that worked out. Yeah. Oh, look, he's right here. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we luckily we got along well. We got
Yeah.
along very
I
well, and
remember we tried to make you draw stuff. I don't remember whether we succeeded or that you just kept on talking.
I think I kept on talking. It's a Vulcan mind meld, or a Jedi mind trick. I no, I draw
You
for
can draw
myself.
though. You said you can draw.
Yeah, I draw for myself. I draw, cartoon-like characters. I can do sketches of people, but I never really present myself as an illustrator. I draw for my sake, and sometimes to work out storyboards and things like that. But I see myself more as a writer actor or actor writer. But I really don't see myself as an illustrator. I think they're far more talented people, that I would call an illustrator before I would ever say that about me. But yes, so that's where we met in that kitchen back there all those many years ago, and we stayed in touch. And I've come to see you two in Amsterdam, and I think, have you been back? You've been back here at least once, right?
In 2015, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
pre-Trump.
But either way, we've stayed in touch, and this has been great.
Yeah,
Absolutely
we saw
great.
you in Haarlem. You had this wonderful project, Haarlem to Haarlem.
Yes, yes, that's true. That was with oh wow, I'm gonna hate myself. Angelique, I believe. Oh, I have to look up her name before we finish this because I got to say it properly. But yes, I met that person the same way I met you, you know, in Noelle's kitchen. And she was
Cool.
another person who was traveling and staying at this Airbnb, and Noelle being a friend of mine and all that. And we got to talking about education and comics and kids and teenagers. And for years, I've done a lot of work with young people, children and teens, teaching them the creative arts, various disciplines within the creative arts for self-expression, not necessarily to turn them into comic book writers or illustrators, but to give them another way of sort of working out or working through things or just exploring their imagination.
Yeah,
And so
I remember the workshop you gave there and how enthusiastic the kids were. But did you actually get kids from Haarlem to Haarlem, or the other way around, or was it
digitally, yes, not
digitally?
physically. We unfortunately never got that far. That was a hope. That was something that we were trying to work towards. But unfortunately, just time and money and things just didn't allow us to get to that particular point. But the students, we had students in Harlem, New York, which were Black kids, African American teens, and so forth, and then students in Harlem in the Netherlands. And we had a class of each. I think it was two classes because we did it twice. And they eventually were able to communicate with each other a bit through the internet, through videotaping, questions and answers and things like that. We tried to find a way to have them on air at the same time, but because of the time difference and the school schedules, it never quite worked out. But yes, the students did sort of meet each other through the videos.
This is, as far as I know you, also your core business, and making people enthusiastic for being creative, and especially kids, and especially comics.
Yes, I'm weird like that. What can I tell you? I've often said, and I think I've sort of lived by this rule that I enjoy and I really, really sort of feel like it's a bit of a mission and a way of saying thanks. I was a nutty kid with a wild imagination. I drove my mom's crazy, with my action figures and my drawing, my constantly making up all kinds of wacky stories. And for some reason, she didn't throw me away. She encouraged that. She made room for that. And I then was able to meet people in different professions, creative arts, like musicians and illustrators and writers and things and actors over the years, who turned around and sort of gave me some advice or helped me sort of explore some of my interests. And I always felt like, they were there for me. And if they hadn't been, certain things that I've managed to accomplish wouldn't have happened. So to some degree, I turn around and I try and do the same because I feel that is something that I want to do and should do. The other thing is I enjoy watching young people get it. When they suddenly realize I can manifest something out of nothing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can make something happen. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a great feeling. I
it
think
is.
that's where you and I connect also over the educational aspect of it. And I do want to throw in a picture right now, the one that you said. Yeah, I don't know. I have this thing about pictures.
That's fine. You're an illustrator among other things. So yes. So
Where
these
is it?
you're
There it
seeing, yeah.
is.
Oh, there. Oh, it went away.
Oh,
There it is.
there it
That's
is.
that's one of many workshops that I've given over the years. This one in particular is taking place, if I remember correctly, in Yekaterinburg, which
Wow.
is in Russia. About four years ago. It's like 2 years prior to COVID. So yes, like 2017 or 18.
Wow, this is already a different era, pre-COVID
Yes,
and pre-war.
yeah, pre-war, pre-conflict on a lot of levels, but it was a wonderful experience. I managed to, I was invited to go speak in 5 different cities in Russia, starting in Moscow. So it was Moscow, Yekaterinburg, Nizhny Tagil, Pushma, and St. Petersburg. I am surprised I can still say those things, right? Yeah, I can still remember. But it was wonderful. And here's something, because you mentioned pre-war and all that. So we'll go political for just like 30 seconds. People are people. Absolutely. It doesn't matter where you go. You're going to find good, you're going to find bad, you're going to find confused. One of the experiences I had while I was doing this, and again, predominantly with young people, college age to almost elementary school, but I was with a group of high school students and talking about creating your own comics, telling your own stories. And one of the students stood up and asking a question and said, "Do you think anybody cares about our stories? That they even care about us? Why would they even want to hear any of our stories?" And I remember thinking 2 things just before I answered her question. The first thing was, I'd heard this exact same question spoken by Black and Hispanic kids here in the United States. So that was one. It was like suddenly, it was like full circle. It was almost word for word the same question. And secondly, was what I said to her was, in my lifetime, I have heard anything I've heard about Russia or Russian people has come from non-Russian people and non-Russian media. And so I said, don't you think it's about time that I learn a little something about the people from the people? And it was like there was this stunned expression on their faces, and then they started smiling. So I can only hope that some of those people that I met with have had the opportunity or have made the opportunity to tell their stories, because literally it doesn't matter what government, what country, what religion you're under. We all have a unified community kind of story or image, and then we have our own individual experiences. And sometimes they're more common denominators than differences.
Yeah. And did you especially teach them to write their story in comics, or was this for stories in general?
No, well, that particular session, as in this session here that you see in this photograph, is comics.
Ah,
It's comics. It's
I personally think that telling your own story is extra powerful when you do it in comic form.
Well, some of the challenge, and I'm sure you've encountered this too, being I know you held a very lofty position for quite some time. I think you'll notice that sometimes the people, whether they're adults or teens or children, but more so teens and adults, sort of like, I can't draw. I can't draw a straight line. I can't do this. And you got to sort of work them past that fear, that paralysis, that thing that makes them think it's got to look like Rembrandt. No, 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 no. Let's start here and begin to develop it. And slowly but surely you can ease them into it. Younger children are a little bit more daring.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always like, I want to draw.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always teach them tricks in which you avoid drawing the difficult stuff. Sometimes even by just having text balloons coming from the side. You don't draw the person at all. It's the story that comes first.
Right. Or sometimes when they really want to draw some sort of character, I teach them to start with shapes. We're less intimidated to draw circles and ovals and squares and rectangles and triangles. Okay, so draw this shape. Okay, now take the points off and do this. And now what do you have? Oh, that's like a chest. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, let's draw a line from there and then put a little block with a little extra circle, and they start to form like a hand, and then you do the same with feet or a shoe. It's a little oval for the feet. And suddenly they begin to see that you can still communicate to some degree the image in your head. And they start to move on that, and it's really about getting us past the sort of self-doubt and the imposter syndrome. Oh, nobody's going to want to see my story. Nobody's going to want to read my thing. No one's going to care about my art. Really? Oh, wow. I don't know. I'm sitting here and I'm curious.
Yeah. I also thought of maybe there's no one's lying awake at this moment thinking, oh, I wish this particular person would make something, but people are thinking every day, gosh, I really like to pick up a nice book and read a significant story right now. So yes, people are waiting for that kind of work, so go make it.
Right. And then the other end of that is the first person that you need to satisfy is you. You can worry about an audience later. Really, if you have a story to tell, if you have art you want to create for you, create it. Start there. So anyway, but this is one of the things that I do and I've done for
that's
a lot of years.
Mini motivational speech of you. Wonderful. I want to see more pictures. What picture do you want to show us from your?
Well, let's sort of go back to the Archie stuff for a moment. And I realized I didn't send you any Batman, so because that's kind of funny. But here we go. So this is Archie's world tour. So my time in comics sort of started out as, obviously as a reader and a fan, and going to comic conventions and meeting people and things like that. And I made friends with several people who were writers in the industry over the years. But it was much later in my life that I started to actually try and write comics. But one of the things that happened was I had written a couple of things independently that had been published. And I decided, well, let me try and get some work in the industry. So I've read Archie comics since I was a kid. I
don't know if everyone in Holland knows Archie comics, but they're huge in America, right?
They're huge all over the world. Maybe you know better than I. Maybe people in Holland don't know it, but it's known in India, China, Russia, so many places. And as a matter of fact, I've run into people from at least 4 countries over the years. Lots of people who started to learn English by reading the Archie comics first before they ever came to America. So it's definitely an international entity. And it's been around.
A bunch of teenagers doing school stuff.
Supposedly typical American teenagers doing typically American teenage stuff. But even that's changed to some degree over the years. Archie started out, and I'm not going to do a whole history on it, but it started out in the late 1930s. So it was reflecting America at that time, the 1930s through the 50s. So it was goofy and silly and funny.
And when did you do this one?
Well, this one, this is, oh, wow. Good question. This is probably the early 2000s.
Okay, no cell phones yet, I guess. No.
No, this one, I think there were tape recorders. There were Walkmans. That's right. So yeah, it's the 2000s. But the thing was that I'm trying to put this politely. Archie, again, typical American teenagers in America kind of meant typical American white teenagers. Wall-to-wall white kids. And for decades. Then at one point they created Coach Clayton, who was a black coach at Riverdale High, which is where the main protagonists go to school. But you never really saw his family. And then somewhere in the 1960s, his son Chuck started to pop up every now and then in a story for like that long. So then 20 some odd years, 30 years later, I'm pitching, to maybe write something for Archie. And they asked me, they said, they brought me into the boardroom and they sat me down as a group of editors and things around the table. And I'm thinking, I'm just here to try and get a job writing, right? And they said, we want to ask you a question. I said, okay, fine. And the gentleman in charge at the time said, why do people think that Archie is white bread? Now, for those of you who don't know what that term means, it means, again, why do they think that Archie is only about white people and white topics? And I sat there smiling for a moment because I'm thinking there's like 4 or 5 different ways I could answer that question. One of them will get me thrown out of here. But I was trying to say, this is an opportunity here. It's an opportunity for some real communication. So I was in their boardroom surrounded by Archie merchandise and comics on racks and things like that. And I just grabbed a number of things and put them on the table. And I said, take a look at this. Your 5 lead kids are all white. If I open up to any page on the street in Riverdale or in the high school, 99% of the time, it's all white backgrounds. You only see white children. That's all you see. They said, but we have this character and this character and this character. So they named one who is East Indian, one who is Japanese, and one who is Chinese. I said, that's really nifty. What about their families? I mean, are they the only ones of their kind in the town? And where are they? You don't even see them in the background. I said, that's why that impression of it being white bread, because that's all we ever see 99% of the time. So I'm thinking, now that I finished my little speech, I will definitely not get any work from them. And it was the exact opposite. They hired me to do a bunch of different things. I did a number of stories, but this was the first story. Actually, not the first. It's the first major story I did for them. It was a 5-part mini series called Archie's World Tour, where I took the Archie gang on a 5-city tour through different countries. It was a school trip. And it was a little bit of an adventure spy thriller, but it was really to get them outside of Riverdale and get them seeing different cultures and things like that. So they went to Amsterdam, they went to England, they went to Africa, Senegal, Nairobi, and they also went to Switzerland.
What did they do in Amsterdam?
You see the book, read the book.
They do typical American.
Well, yeah, I also had them in Spain too. But again, so to keep it interesting for the readers, so that it's fun to turn the pages. There's silly stuff, there's adventure stuff like spy thriller thing stuff, but then there's also glimpses of the different cultures, and again showing different teenagers interacting with each other, black, white, whatever. And that was important to me, was to get that mix going so that it was just in front of you. It was just there on the page. And it was a part of the story. It wasn't like a black story or this story. It's a story. And here are these people. And as I said, I for several years was able to write a number of things with them, including, I think I sent you one with Archie and Chuck Clayton on the cover. And that was another 5-part. Hold this picture for a moment. You go along the upper row, the top row, those are 1, 2, 3, 4 of the stories that I did with the Archie World Tour.
Cool.
So that was they started out in England, then it went to Spain, then it went to Africa, and then and this was Rome. So yeah, and then there was 2 more issues below that, but it was fun. And now the Chuck Clayton image on the bottom right, the one that's got a little bit of a green background, and then the one that has a yellow background.
Yeah.
Chuck being, again, the black teenager in the series. Chuck wants to be a cartoonist, a comic book artist when he grows up. So he's the one that everybody goes to get drawings and things like that. But again, he'd only popped up in 1 or 2, story. No, I shouldn't say 1 or 2. That's wrong. That's inaccurate. He would show up in a story every now and then, and usually just for a couple of pages here and there. So at one point, Mike Pellerito, who was the one of the senior editors there at Archie, he's now the president, Mike said, can you do a story that's based on Chuck teaching kids how to create their own comics, just like you, Alex, just like you teach that? And I said, a story? You kidding? I got a bunch. So they let me do several stories like that too. So those are 2 issues from that series. So working with Archie was a lot of fun because I had the opportunity to sort of mix things up and to not only explore inclusivity and diversity in the series, but also to at least as far as I was concerned, to develop some more interesting backstory for some of their supporting characters. You know, like I do things with Moose, who usually was seen as just a big dumb jock, and I wanted to make him more human. You know, you can still have fun with him and all that, but I wanted to give, you know, like he has other things going on in his life, and why is he going out with this cute girl named Midge who isn't stupid? She's very smart. She's very sensible. Why does she like him? Well, because you know, Moose has a heart. You know, he's not just a brute. He's not just a bully. He's not a bully anyway. He has a temper thing. He has a little anger management problem. You know, but you know, when it gets down to it, Moose is a good guy, and that's what Midge sees. So I wanted to develop things like that so that it wasn't just one dimension or two-dimensional characters creating sometimes negative stereotypical actions.
It's what we call in Holland the social emotional comics.
Yeah. Well, I happen to, you know, and it's funny because I grew up in the 50s, 60s, 70s. A lot of comics were like pretty much one note. Your heroes were heroes. Your villains were villains. The victims were victims. You didn't need to know anything more about them than that. And the problem with that was after a while, that becomes old. You know, it becomes very like, okay, I've heard this 1,000 times before. Isn't there anything more? And then the attitude became, in at least here in the States, I don't know about other countries, well, yeah, let's do extreme stuff. Let's do extreme violence. Let's do extremely sexual stuff. And nothing in the middle. And I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. There is middle ground. There is a way to take these kind of characters or your regular characters and give them some depth and some humanity, and at the same time keep them in the present. You know, social attitudes change. Maybe we become a little bit more aware of things, but we don't have to go to the extreme of a bloodbath or an orgy. And so that's sort of one of the things I tried doing. There's even an Archie comic I did where Archie and the gang meet President Barack Obama and Sarah Palin, and that was a two-parter. And people were saying, how can you do that? How can you do that kind of a story? I said, with fun, but I also want to have a little bit of a message in there. Oh, yep, that's the Clash of the New Kids. That's another one that I'll tell you about in a moment. But the Obama one was more about, it looked like a goofy situation with mistakes and false impressions and everything. But what the story was really about was media manipulation. But you could do it just so long as you kept it fun and very much in the right tone of the Archie world. But yeah, what they were doing using the internet and the news media got involved, and these two, you know, high profile characters became, you know, a little upset and wound up in Riverdale to see these kids, and what are you doing? All of that was about, yeah, you set up something that was not quite honest. Yeah, you just released it as a post in the media and on the internet for your group, your high school group. But then the internet exploded with that, and then news media picked up on it. And now here's this situation. Had you been telling the truth, this wouldn't be a big problem. But because you were trying to scam, now you've got to deal with this.
Did you have to have a lot of back and forth with the Archie people to fine tune that kind of stuff? Were they
you know,
scared about it, or was it?
I want to say that in some cases, I think that I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed. More often than not, I have the opportunity to work with really good people. Michael and Victor were the editors involved in that book. They seemed to understand what I was going for. I think to a certain degree, I never took it too far. I never made it too complicated, and I didn't make it preachy. I vaguely remember, you know, there were some notes on it, but I think we found a good balance for the story. And again, for me, it was about, I remembered what world I was in. I wasn't trying to do, you know, Tolstoy in Archie. It was, you know, I'm not doing network in Archie. I was doing Archie, and how could I tell this story in this world? So I was trying to be respectful and mindful of their property, their IP, but at the same time, expand it a bit.
Yeah.
And I think we were able to, working together, we were able to find a good, you know, middle ground. because there was a plot I had before that they went no, 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 no. Yes. So yeah, they were being honest. No, no, you can't do that. But yes, you could definitely do this.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going I'm going to show you something I did.
Oh yeah,
I'm
please.
starting to do since
Casa
1.5 years
Kiki.
now. It's Casa Kiki for the biggest girls comics magazine in Holland, and this ties in with what you did for Archie, I guess. The editors asked me specifically to work on this idea of a girl of color who moves to northern Italy with her family to start a hotel, and I
Ah,
think it's the very first the comic character of color for Tina magazine.
wow.
Not as a, well, at least the first main character. There have always been black friends, but
Mm-hmm.
not like a whole family. So
Taking the point now, right? They're center stage. Yes. Wow.
yeah, and yeah, with that, but I've tried in different scenarios to go different ways, and sometimes we're yeah, stuff is it's like, oh, let's not go there too much, or but it's always, in good communication. But it's really, it feels for me like a new field of trying to educate young readers with more diversity,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
also pleasing the parents.
Well, there's that chasm that we have to sort of straddle, to try and yes, it's more about I guess one could say, yeah, we're trying to please different people, but I think in another way we're trying to make the material accessible to different types of people,
Yeah.
and again trying to be respectful, but also telling our truth. There was an Archie cover that you had a moment ago, which was um, the cover before this. That yeah, right, Clash of the New Kids. This was I think the last big project I did for Archie, where they wanted to infuse Riverdale High and the series with more new characters. So I was, along with Fernando Ruiz, who is an illustrator at Archie, and he's also written some stories for them, and Dan Parent. We were all sort of assigned to come up with a new, fresh group of students. So what I did was I came up with a plot that, because you take a little bit from real life here in the States at one point.
What year was this?
You always ask the great questions.
Yeah, well,
Um,
yeah. I just because you said something early noughties, and you did it for 7 years, so this could be 2007, which is a different world still from now, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. Before we end, I'll go figure that out. As a matter of fact, I can probably hang on a second. Let me just do it this way. Archie, Clash of the New Kids. Okay, and the winner is 2014.
Right. Okay. So did you put in any gay characters or trans characters, or was it just before that wave?
Wait, 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 I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. Where are you?
Are
There you are.
you?
Okay. I had to shift tabs here. So one of the things is Dan Parent had created, and if you see the blonde-haired boy with the slightly wavy hair, not the taller one of the blondes, but the boy who's wearing the green shirt
Oh
over
yeah,
Archie's right shoulder.
with
That
his shoulder length hair.
that's Kevin. Kevin was the premier gay character in the Archie universe, and that was Dan Parent's character. I forget who Fernando came up with. I came up with several new characters who were more a couple of rebel characters, someone who was smarter than Dilton, who was
Who is the cool girl with the white streak?
again, I don't have all the names in my head anymore, but
Is
she's
she
a rebel.
your
Yeah, that's
invention?
one of mine. That's one of mine. There's a character who's sight impaired, who right now should be wearing shades, but she's not in that cover. It's a black girl next to Jughead, and so she's sight impaired, and the story for her and the story for the girl with the white frost were particularly fun for me. but I wrote this. This is also like a 4 or 5 part mini series where I introduced, there are high schools in Riverdale that were closing down due to budget cuts, which is something that was going on in New York and in certain states here in the country. So they were consolidating not only students, but staff members. So you wound up with a huge infusion of new students at Riverdale, as well as some new teachers. And again, it's a way of refreshing the world so that you have more options, more characters to bounce off of.
Yeah, it can really work, but you have to. What kind of tricks do you use script wise to ease the reader into that and not overwhelm them with all these new kids?
Well, one, it's pacing. You have to lay it out. Literally, when I map out even a one issue, I map out is what's the point of the story? What am I trying to say with the story? Like I said before with the Obama Palin story, it wasn't like, oh, good, I get to use President Obama and Sarah Palin. This is gonna be fun. I'll say this, and I'll say no. It's like, why? Yeah, I know they asked me to put them in there, but why? Why would they be there? What can I say with them? And so, I wasn't going to make it about the political, aggression that happened between them during the campaigns and everything, because that's not funny. That's really not funny. So what I do is I look for a theme, and eventually, because of some things that had happened in real life, I went media manipulation. That will work, and I can see how to make that funny, and I can see how these students might innocently do something that sets that in motion. Okay, so then if it's going to start here, how do I want it to end? What's the lesson or the message I want to give off here? Okay, if that's what I want to say, then I map out how we get from here to there in stages. So in theater, if you're writing a play, you would do an act 1, act 2. What would happen in act 1? What would happen in act 2? And your climax, of course, and conclusion would be in act 2. If you're writing a film, you can do act 1, 2, and 3, or you can do what we call beat sheets, which is, exposition. Okay, we're explaining how the story starts. Then something happens that sets everything in motion, right? And then everything rises in the story, keeps building, building, building to the climax. And then once the climax, we have to sort of, so that's called, the falling action. So we have to resolve the conflict and then end the story. So I take the story apart and I look at it in sections. And in this case, I wanted our regular kids to be a little like jostled by this. There's a girl who comes in there who's style conscious, and she actually designs her own clothes, and she wants to be a designer. She's not wealthy, but she can really put together some nice outfits. Whereas Veronica buys everything. She buys the top designer clothes. And now this girl is sort of encroaching on her territory. She's looking just as good and spending a little or no money. So there's a conflict there, but it's also about values. Do you have to buy something to look good, or can you create something? Right. The same thing with some of the other characters, so that ultimately it's about pushing the norm for the regular characters, so that they're first a little off balance, maybe irritated, maybe intimidated by it, maybe aggravated by it. But like anything else in life, we have to learn to get along. We may not necessarily like the person, but we can be respectful. And if they can be respectful, then we can coexist. So that's really was my goal, was to watch these kids work their way in, some of them being off balance and nervous and all of that, and some of our kids being inappropriate, making fun of them or whatever, and then lessons being learned. By the end of it, hey, you know what? It's school. We're all kids. We're all trying to figure out where we belong. Let's just coexist. So that was
Let me put in a little commercial here for you, because you're giving great tips away here on writing in general. But that's also you have courses for this, right?
Yes, I do teach and I consult my writing. Yes, as a writing coach and consultant. Yes.
Yeah. So anyone watching, go to Alex for your script writing tips. And I saw one on your site that said. Character is plot and plot is character.
Yep.
What do you mean by that?
That is a mantra from way before I was born, but it is one I carry very high on a staff. A lot of people, go to the movies and they enjoy a film, or they read a book and they enjoy the story, and they think that it's all about, it was a great plot. Yeah, it was great. It was cool that there was this action, and it was cool that this murder happened, and it was cool that this monster came out, without realizing that what you're really following is, yeah, you're reading the plot, but you're really following the characters. You really become engaged with the hero, the villain, the victims, whatever. You worry about your hero making it. If you read Lord of the Rings, you're worried about Frodo and those characters making it from the start on this perilous journey to the end. How are they going to survive? Will they survive? Look at the damage being done. Oh my goodness, I hope, this is what you get caught up in. Yeah, it's a neat plot. You have stuff happening. But if you didn't care about what was happening to whom,
Yeah.
then it'll just be like watching a series of special effects in the movie. Oh, that blew up nicely. Oh, what a great CGI monster.
Yeah,
So what?
you got to make your readers care about the characters first.
Exactly. And that works the same with a simple little slice of life story about a child growing up in a beautiful, idyllic countryside village, or gangsters trying to bump off some other hood, or aliens attacking the planet. It's the same thing. What's happening to this person? Why should I care? Oh, because they remind me of so-and-so, or they're likable, or they're vulnerable, or I can identify with the challenge, the conflict they're going against. There's
what comic character that you created do you care most about personally?
Blackjack.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yes.
So let me find the image that goes with that.
There you go. Yeah, let's see if you can find that one. Yeah. There you
There
go.
it is.
No, you have. Yep, that's it. That's a character that I created for a number of reasons, but I'll try and be very short here. Growing up, again, I was born in the 1950s, early 1950s. So television and movies from the 50s to almost the 70s, all of the hero characters, whether they were Westerns, cowboys, or soldiers, or detectives, or sword fighting, knights in armor, all white. They're the only black characters I saw in the majority of the films that I watched, and the stories that I read were usually butlers, or maybe they were with coach conductors, or they were servants in some way, shape, or they were shoe shines, or in the more, let's say, stereotypical storylines from the earlier years, they were singing and dancing and being just idiots and clowns, because that was the role that they were being given. They were not allowed to do anything heroic or even average. Just running a store, just living a life, having a home somewhere and farming, just having a good, no, that wasn't happening. So yeah, I still wanted to be an adventurer. I still wanted to be the hero. I still wanted to ride a horse and fight spies and all this kind of stuff. I was a normal, kid, but I never saw anybody that looked like me to do that. So I just imagined me doing it. As the civil rights movement came in the 60s, two things happened. One, Blacks and African Americans suddenly were able to see themselves in some of those positions in fiction. And the other thing was, we were learning how much we had done in real life that had been suppressed or ignored or unrecorded. And suddenly a lot of people were going, oh, we're not starting from scratch. We have a history of being there and of fighting for the right causes, the wrong causes. But yeah, we were there. We can be brave. We can be explorers. We were doctors and inventors and all. Son of a gun. Where do we go from here? So for me, when that was happening, the kid in me who wanted to be that heroic character now realized, oh, not only can I be, but there were people ahead of me who were. And that's pretty cool. So by the time I became an adult and started writing, one of the things I wanted to do was create a character who's pleased the kid in me, that adventurer, explorer, but also was relevant to what I had learned about our history. So I created Aaron Day, aka Blackjack, who was an African American soldier of fortune in the 1930s. And I picked the 30s because black men had fought in World War I, had gone with Admiral Perry to explore the North Pole. There's a number of things that we had done that had maybe a little recording here and there, but predominantly most people didn't know anything about. So I was going to be able to use some of that actual historical backdrop for some stories, but take my fictional character and take him on adventures that I knew could have happened if circumstances permitted.
And discover that this is an adventure in China, I think.
This one, Blood and Honor, the plot of this story is Aaron, who lives in the United States, is approached by the emissaries of a Japanese dignitary. This dignitary in Japan has been invited to go speak at a peace conference in China. Now, at that time in the 1930s, Japan had already invaded China. So there was already hostility going on there, and it was already preparations for moving toward World War II. Things were going to not work out really well in another 4 or 5 years. But there were, in real life, Japanese citizens, dignitaries, politicians, who spoke out against Japan's imperialistic attitude, who spoke out against their invading China. My fictional character was written to reflect one of those people. And so for some reason, he has sent people to hire Aaron Day, who's got a reputation as being very good at what he does as a soldier of fortune, bodyguard, mercenary, to have him come all the way to Japan and be his bodyguard. And Aaron is suspicious because he goes, you have good trained men over there. Why me? And the answer he gets leaves him even more curious that there's something else going on underneath. So for that reason, he's going to go. But the other reason he chooses to go, and this is where, again, my life experiences key in. There are black bigots. My people have prejudice problems the same as anybody else on the planet. His father, who had been a soldier of fortune and a mercenary before him, had never really liked Asians. He'd always, made remarks about them to Aaron. When they would travel, he said, you can't trust them, they're this, they're that. And yet Aaron had met some and actually learned some swordsmanship from one and was always confused. And so now here he is at this point, and he's wondering, I'm still trying to figure out where my father ends and I begin. So will I do the job right, even though I'll be working for a Japanese person? Am I my father or am I my own man? So he takes the job for that reason as well, to find out what he's about.
Nice psychological layer.
Yeah. And that, again, goes back to what I was saying about, you can tell stories, but you can layer in significant moments to make your character something more than one-dimensional.
Blackjack got an award. Was it the Ringo Award?
Yeah, no, not the. Oh, jeez, I would love it. He's received several awards over the years, but not the Ringo, not yet. Knock on, maybe an Eisner one day, who knows? But yeah, he's received some awards, and the thing that I'm most proud of the books is two things. One, we've done some graphic novels. There's several graphic novels: Second Bite of the Cobra, Blood and Honor, and There Came a Dark Hunter. So there's 3 graphic novels. There's also about 6 short story anthologies, all of which are available through Amazon. And so the fact that the audience base is so mixed and diverse, men, women, people of different countries, is fantastic. I love it. Primarily because when I first started doing the comics, a lot of people were saying, oh, this is only going to be for people who live in like Harlem or Bed-Stuy, or Watts. This is only going to be for Black urban people. So no one else is going to want to buy it. So we're not going to do this mainstream. So I wound up having to find backers and producing the thing independently. So the moment I started getting fan letters from, Amsterdam and from Germany, I'm going, where are the brothers hanging out in Copenhagen? Huh? Tell me that, please. So this is another reason that I enjoy it. And it's been optioned in California. I don't know that Hollywood's ever going to really do the thing.
Yeah, that's what I remember you telling us that you did this. Well, it sounds like it should be a movie, But so it has been optioned. Does that mean that?
Well, what it means is at a couple of intervals, at certain points, people put down money, studio or producers put down money to hold on to the option to make a film from this within a certain period of time. 2 times that has not worked out. I get to keep the money, but they didn't make the film. And it seems that a lot of the time where the holdup is, where the blockage is that upper level. We've had actors, screenwriters, producers like Jerry Bruckheimer and Spike Lee. We've had several studio executives wanting to do this. And somehow there's always that ceiling blockage somewhere up there. And it's been, I would like to say it's been frustrating, but it's a little more than that. But by the same token, I didn't create the character and I didn't create the stories to make a blockbuster Hollywood film. I created the stories to tell the stories. I created the story because I wanted to see this kind of a character out there. I would love to see the character reach more people. And I know it can.
This would be a really nice Netflix series, I think.
Excuse me?
Netflix series.
Some of the streamers are also controlled by the same people that the big studios are controlled by. It's a matter of whether or not they can see it. Like a lot of times, if we take the racial aspect out of it for just a split second, just a split, right? It's not, he has no superpowers. He's not in a fancy costume and he can't fly and stuff like that. So that's a holdup right there, because right now what's making money is the superhero stuff.
Yeah.
So for some of these people, it was about that. Well, can he do this? For other people, it was about, oh, well, this is the 1930s. The audiences don't care about that. Let's make him a present day hero. Yeah, well, when you do that, you take away all of the incredible things that he did, because they were incredible because he did them in the 1930s, because there were people like him doing these things in the 1930s. The story is about the fact that, yes, people of color and different cultures and races were accomplishing things in the 1930s, not present day. We already know that. So that would take away from it. And then, so if it's not superheroes and it's not about the time zone, the time period, then it's about, it's a black hero. I don't know that he'll really fly in the Asian countries. They don't really, take to, except for Will Smith, So there's only one black person on the planet that Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, and any other people from the Pacific Rim would be interested in? I don't think so. But someone does. So again, there's a lot of barriers to work through, and it may or may not happen.
Are you still motivated to write? Are you writing new stuff for Blackjack?
Yeah. I'll tell you. And again, I don't know how long we can go with this, so I don't want to be too verbose. But I'll say this: if I were not motivated before, I'm even more motivated now for 2 reasons. But I am motivated. But anyway, if I were not, first reason is that for several years, and I won't say what the plot is, but for several years, I had a plot for a story with Blackjack and a major event that happened in the 1930s. And I kept working out details for it, but I never sat down and write it. I wrote all around it. I wrote other stories all around it. My buddy Chris Ryan and I wrote a couple of stories all around it, but never that one, right? And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't write that story. I had the characters in my head. Why couldn't I just sit and write it? During COVID, a bit of information reached me about this incident that I was going to write about that changed the whole scope of it. There'd been a major part of information about that incident that had never been revealed before.
Now you make me very curious. What is the incident?
I'll tell you about it in the green room. Okay. But had I written the story before, I would have been as inaccurate as everybody else. Now, one depends on what one believes, but I like to believe that some forces were going, no, not yet. No, not yet. You don't know enough yet. Hold on. Because once I learned this additional information, I went, oh my God, that changes so much. and I was even more excited about doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. The other reason is, and again, to go political for like 30 seconds, there's a big push in the United States right now to ban certain types of books from libraries and schools and things, mostly dealing with racial history. So if you want to be innocent for the moment, that part of society, okay, coming up through all these decades, there was a lot of stuff that people didn't record, so you didn't know we were able to accomplish this, that. Now, you didn't know enough stuff about blacks and people of color because people weren't keeping records. So you ignored that. Okay, and at a certain point, you became aware of it and it was embarrassing, and so you didn't want to talk about it. All right. Now there's a faction of people who are desperately trying to erase our history. And that's not okay. That's really not okay.
Yeah, the
So
book burning.
even it's more important for a material like this and more accurate documentaries and things like that, all of that to be out there. And so yes, I'm still quite motivated to continue writing the material. And if Hollywood never touches this, and by the way, if Hollywood does it, I want it done right. That's a whole nother thing. But if Hollywood never does it, that's okay.
Well, that's great. I'll give you one more picture to tell us something about. Which one
Okay.
do you?
Oh, you pick. Oh, well, okay. Black Panther. There's two covers of Black Panther. There's this one, and then there's another one with the character. Yeah, that one. It's a funny thing. I have been extremely fortunate over the past 3-4 years to have been involved in two Black Panther projects, writing projects. The first one was the Black Panther psychology book, which you saw, which was is part of a series created by Dr. Travis Langley, who's a psychologist. I hope I said that right, Travis. He's a wonderful man, a very intelligent man, and he started doing a series of psychology of insert comic book characters' names. So Batman, Wonder Woman, Daredevil, Black Panther, several other characters in the comic book industry. And it wasn't just him writing. He had other psychologists and psychiatrists do papers, essays on different aspects of the nature of the character or supporting characters or how the fan base was reacting to this on this sort of more introspective level, which is very cool. When he went to do the work on the Black Panther psychology book, someone said to him, you should talk to Alex Simmons because he was involved in certain things and, he's read the books and he knew some of the writers and people on it. And so I wound up not only having a good time talking with Dr. Langley, but also I became a co-editor on that project, which is not this one, it's the other one. And I also was able to write a piece in it and interview one of the first Black actors to voice the Black Panther character in an animated cartoon. So that was a fun project to work on. That came out, I think, like 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. And then the Black Panther Tales of Wakanda anthology came out a couple of years ago. I think it came out in 22, early part of 22. And this is 18 individual stories about the Black Panther or supporting characters in the world of Wakanda, written by 18 different African-American writers. And I, thank goodness, am one of them. And it was really fun because we got to pitch, what we wanted to write about, which character, what part of his life or what part of his world we wanted to touch on. And it was so diverse. It was so great. I chose to write about T'Challa, the Black Panther's actual birth mother, because the character we know from the films is his stepmother.
Right.
Right. So I wanted to write about his mom and something that she went through prior to him being born. She was pregnant with him, but prior to him being born.
Did you have to get permission from the?
Oh yeah, the book was compiled. The writers were hired, and the project was spearheaded by Jesse Holland, who's a journalist and also a fiction writer of some renown. And he had already worked out all the deals with Marvel Comics. He got permission from Marvel. So we were okay to do this, but they had to okay each and every story and each and every writer. So we got screened, and they looked at our plots, and then they okayed the plots, and they made suggestions, and then they had to okay the stories when we finished them. So there's a lot of
Didn't they already have a kind of idea somewhere lying around about the birth mother? No. Okay, that was open.
Yeah, when it's a funny thing. One of the things I do in one of my classes is I talk about where ideas come from, and as a matter of fact, I mentioned that I have a podcast called "Tell the Damn Story." Sunday, July 16th episode is going to be one of the methodologies that Chris and I use to come up with ideas. But when I heard that I was going to have the opportunity to do this, I thought about everything I knew about Wakanda and about the Black Panther, but I really didn't have an idea for a while. And once I realized that, okay, now Alex, they've okayed you, so now you have to present a plot. I was thinking, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And I think that's a key place to go. Some people go with, oh, okay, well, what's trending now? What's cool now? What did I see someone else do that maybe I can do a variation on it? I think it's more authentic, if you can, to go with, what do you want to say? What do you really want to talk about? What interests you? What fascinates you? And what fascinated me was how little we knew about his mother. Now, Freud would say, well, that's because you were raised by your mother, Alex, and you have that connection, and you still honor her a lot when you speak in different places. And so you have that thing going on. And yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. It's organic. It's authentic. How can I go wrong with that? So I thought about it. I came up with a story idea for that character. I presented it, and knowing that Marvel would have to okay it, I tried to do a little bit of reading regarding the things that had been said about her, so mine wouldn't be too far afield, and then presented it. And luckily, they okayed it.
That's really cool. Yeah. You really contributed to that whole universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, again, the realities of being a storyteller, whether it's for film or books or plays, or even as creative, when you write music, you can tell stories with music. You should come from someplace that matters, something that inspires, touches you, stimulates an idea, and explore that and go with it, have fun with it, tell your story as best you can. And if you can please yourself, then you can go searching for your audience. Or if you're doing it strictly as a job, then okay, what's your audience? What are they into? And how can you find a story that you'll have a good time telling, but will definitely please your audience?
Well, on this great advice, I want to propose to end the live stream, so we can go to the green room and you can tell me all your real secrets. Let me see how this is done. Okay, people, thank you for watching, and go and see Alex at simmonshereandnow.com.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Alex. See you in
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Margreet.